Hello and welcome to The Comic Cave. I'm Ramsey, aka Captain Away, and today I'm reviewing the collection Infinity Gauntlet Aftermath. This is a collection of various comics that claim to continue the story from the end of the Infinity Gauntlet series I covered last week, and from there bridge the gap into the Infinity War sequel. However, most of these comics are only very loosely connected to either story, and have very little point or purpose, to the extent that it feels like these creators are basically just killing time with some filler issues until the start of Infinity War. The most important part of this collection is that it sees the start of the Warlock in the Infinity Watch series, which will continue running through and directly tie into the remaining two major arcs of the Infinity Trilogy and beyond. Since they're really the only important issues here, you could just get those issues in the separate collections that exist for just that series. Since everything in the first volume of those collections is already included in this and the Infinity War Aftermath collection, as well as the collections for War and Crusade, it just made more sense for me to cover these books that give us more of the story. So now you know where I stand, so let's take this away. The collection opens straight out of the end of Infinity Gauntlet, where we see the other side of Adam Warlock's forced teleportation of Silver Surfer, Thor, and Doctor Strange. He apparently returned them to Doctor Strange's home, the Sanctum Sanctorum, still in disarray from when Surfer crashed into it. They have a brief discussion about whether they should try and oppose Adam like they did Thanos and Nebula, before deciding there's not much point. He did seem pretty chill for a Supreme Being. Though we will soon learn that that's not really the case, as Doctor Strange is brought by Pip and Gamora to face off against Warlock, who is now acting a bit like a spoiled brat with ultimate power. They have a fight where Strange is forced to use all of his most powerful magical items like the Orb and Eye of Agamotto and the Scroll and Wand of Watum. The fight concludes with Adam realizing he was out of line and once again promising to be a good god, which means it takes us right back to where we started, which makes this a pretty pointless issue to have even occurred. Yay. Thor's journey we don't see, but Surfer decides that his duty at this point is to destroy the shrine Thanos built to death, because until he does, he can't consider the whole Infinity Gauntlet business truly concluded. And that's kind of a shame, really, because it looked like a pretty cool shrine to me. He sets off and gets in a fight with this guy called Midnight Sun who can't talk and supposedly doesn't want to fight, but Surfer has a ridiculous temper and the fight just keeps escalating until the point he thinks he accidentally killed Midnight. The man is still alive, but that only gets the fight going again, until finally the Inhumans interrupt them. They promise to look after the stranger, but we get no answers about who he is or why he was there, so that's just great. He then gets called Collect by the Collector, whose collection was recently looted. He asks Silver Surfer to find one of his lost collectibles, a young girl who is the carrier for a deadly virus that causes hallucinations before killing the host. Then, for some reason, the Collector also hires this group called the Collection Agency to do the same thing. Man, how many more times can I say collect? Surfer meets the girl and the agency down on a planet, where they get into a fight, and once again Surfer gets really angry and accidentally kills them all. They turn out to be fine, or at least two of them do, and the third turns out to be an unfeeling robot man, so I guess it's okay. Though they say he's dead, he does seem to show up again in a later issue walking around just fine, so I guess it's all good after all. That doesn't stop them though from giving us a really expansive backstory on who these incredibly unimportant characters that we will never see again are, because they are just such exciting and interesting characters. Also, this marks the third time we've seen Surfer accidentally blow up his opponent. First the fake Thanos in Rebirth of Thanos, then Midnight Sun, and now the Collection Agency. And afterwards, he always says, "Oh no, I didn't mean to." Yeah, I'm beginning to doubt your sincerity on that, Surf. 1 time is an accident, 3 is a pattern. In the course of these events, Surfer gets infected with the Madness virus, and proceeds to have a hallucination where he sees himself in the land of the dead, pursued by the phantoms of people whose deaths he is responsible for. Are we sure Surfer is a superhero? Kinda seems at this point like he might be one of the most destructive forces in the galaxy. Despite the shade I'm throwing Surf's way, these 2 issues are probably the most interesting in the collection. We find Surf joined in his death realm by the currently deceased Mar-Vell, the first of the Captain Marvels, and he faces off against his own Dark Link. This evil version doesn't even get named, but he's obviously the Obsidian Surfer, right? I mean, right? Surfer overcomes his opponent by absorbing him into himself, which he seems to do by kissing the other him. That's one of the most homoerotic images I've yet seen, and a genre that isn't good for avoiding homoerotic imagery. Following this story, Surfer finally arrives at Death's Shrine, only to find there's an old enemy of his waiting for him, Captain Reptile. Yeah. Only now he's calling himself Reptile Prime, because he's evolved into this Ridley-looking thing. Their fight is interrupted by a spoiled princess from a nearby planet taking her new space cruiser on a shakedown cruise. She apparently has the power to make men fall instantly in love with her, and when she sees Surfer, she decides she must have him, and so puts herself in danger trying to get to him, even though she knows he's in the middle of a fight with Reptile. After various extremely idiotic damsel in distress moments, Reptile gets away and Surfer sends the princess away while he destroys the shrine. I still don't get why Surfer was so obsessed with this. I guess he just can't stand the thought of anything cool existing in the same universe as him. But we're not done with the terribly offensive character of Princess Eliza Ruantha Pimpnan, or however that's said. She uses her, plot conveniently, ridiculously well-informed robot handmaiden to recreate another planet's spell for summoning the living incarnation of Love, who we saw in Infinity Gauntlet. Mistress Love grants Eliza with further love-controlling powers, but unexpectedly, Sire Hate also shows up and also grants her further powers. She then tracks down Surfer, who still rejects her, so we can have our, 10th completely pointless fight in this comic that, again, resolves nothing. Given her tie to Love and Hate, I expected this Avatar character to be important to the upcoming Infinity stories, but she doesn't seem to appear again outside of Surf's own comic, and only a couple times even there. That pretty much just leaves the new series that begins here, of Warlock and the Infinity Watch. This continues the story we saw in Doctor Strange of Warlock actually being unfit to be the supreme entity of the universe. Eternity brings Warlock to trial, and the Living Tribunal judges him unfit to wield the Infinity Gauntlet. So Warlock divides the gems up and gives them to protectors, creating the Infinity Watch. Gamora gets the Time Gem, Moondragon gets the Mind Gem, Drax gets the Power Gem, Pip gets the Space Gem, Warlock keeps his old pal the Soul Gem for himself, and the Reality Gem goes to an unknown keeper who will remain a mystery until about halfway through the Infinity Crusade. Gamora and Moondragon both follow Adam's lead of wearing their gems on their forehead, but Drax mistakes his gem for a jelly bean and swallows it whole. Pip also doesn't like the gem on the forehead look, but where he keeps it is a mystery to his fellow Watchmen, and probably better left a mystery from the looks of it, cause seriously, where can he keep it? The team then all goes their separate ways, and mostly we follow Warlock as he seeks out his one-time mentor, the High Evolutionary. They cover some of Warlock's background I haven't mentioned before, about how the High Evolutionary gave a young Warlock the Soul Gem and sent him to be the hero of Counter-Earth, a planet in Earth's orbit but on the exact opposite side of the sun. Counter-Earth was created by the High Evolutionary, but he lost control of it to a creature called the Man-Beast, who killed Warlock in the most Christ figure possible way. This, fittingly, concluded with Warlock reviving after 3 days and returning to defeat the Man-Beast, saving Counter-Earth. Adam hopes to seek some words of wisdom from his old mentor, but now we learn the High Evolutionary has become a bit of a simpleton. Meanwhile, the rest of the Watch has been kidnapped and captured by an opponent calling himself Omega, because this was obviously what was going to happen the moment Warlock divided up the Soul Gems. Omega doesn't combine the gems together though, but uses machines to gain mastery of each of the gems individually. He then proceeds to track down Warlock and the two fight, revealing Omega to be none other than the Man-Beast himself. I am sure you are shocked. Warlock defeats the Man-Beast and the Watch find themselves on a tropical island on Earth, which is where we will leave them for now. The only other story of note in this collection is a brief one about what became of Nebula following Infinity Gauntlet. She is now a prisoner on Titan. We see Firelord, another of Galactus' heralds, showing up at the prison to get his revenge on her, since at an earlier point she apparently destroyed his home planet of Xandar. Eros stops him with his powers over empathy, making Firelord see Nebula's history, where we learn that she was apparently repeatedly abused as a child by her father, both physically and quite clearly sexually, until she couldn't take it any longer and she killed him. That's a really messed up story, and I hate that any tragic past for a female character in media always has to involve rape in some way. I also just can't help but feel really sorry for Nebula at this point. She's just easily one of the most mistreated characters I think I've ever seen in a comic, and I'd really like to see a good creative team give her the respect that she more than deserves by this point. She is a woman though, so that'll probably never happen, so let's get to the breakdown. As I said earlier, pretty much everything that happens in this collection is entirely pointless and has little to no relevance to the Infinity series as a whole. The Doctor Strange comic and the Silver Surfer issues have some very poor writing, and really feel almost like a disgrace to even consider them connected to the greatness that was the previous story. The only issues with any relevance are Warlock and the Infinity Watch issues, and even those still are mostly pointless tangents, and any relevant information gets covered in the pages of Infinity War. So that's why I'm giving this collection a recommendation level of very low. I just honestly don't see why you would bother. Marvel would have been better off doing an Infinity Gauntlet tie-in collection, and I really don't know why they haven't. Thanks everybody for watching, and I hope you're enjoying my covering of all the Infinity series stories. If box office numbers are anything to judge by, you've already seen Endgame, and maybe just can't get enough of it. So I hope this helps you fill the gap in between watchings. Go do your part to help make that movie the #1 box office hit of all time, and I'll see you again next time, right here in the Comic Cave.